Well, it's the morning of Georgia Texas Christian, and we are getting ready to get over to SoFi Stadium. A lot of the weather has changed here in LA, a little bit cloudier, colder, and certainly some rain. So, Georgia and TCU for it all. Look, I mean, Georgia's the heavy favorite here. This number keeps moving up. 13, 13 and a half. You can find it now. It depends on where you're looking at. FanDuel has a lot of betting, like a lot of volume betting, and they're at 13 and a half. MGM is still sitting at 12 and a half. That's the lowest that you can get it right now. Everything else is firmly 13, like at Caesars. So much like the airplanes you hear in the background, this thing is moving. And I just thought yesterday's press conference was, I mean, Sonny Dykes was very loose, very talking a lot about how much TCU was excited about excited to be here. I mean, I was trying not to use that term, but that's exactly what it felt like yesterday. Ran into a lot of TCU folks at the pier at Santa Monica. That's where their alumni association is. I would say at the Santa Monica pier, it was probably 70 to 30 TCU. Everywhere else, it's been 100 to 0 or 99 to 1 Georgia. So I expect this to be a very, very heavy Georgia crowd. Maybe if there's 70,000 seats, something like 45,000 for the Dogs, maybe 20 for TCU. That's what it's looked like around. There's been more TCU folks that have piled in here lately. I just it looks like it's going to be a large Georgia crowd, but we'll just see. But on the ground, there's more Georgia people. Like that's not up for debate. We went to the Hawks game last night because they were in town and we could get tickets for $15. There were probably 1,500 to 2,000 Georgia fans at the Hawks game. And I don't know if you get 1,500 to 2,000 Georgia fans at a Hawks game in Atlanta. So it was a lot. Trae Young is a killer, man. That guy is unbelievable. But Stetson Bennett, well, a guy who's similar to Trae in terms of size and stuff like that, he will have to have a good night. Stetson will have to have a good night to win the national championship. I think the thing for him is just trying not to do too much, right? I mean, Stetson knows what to do. He doesn't need to take any advice from me, but he didn't play as well as he could or should against Ohio State. And I think that's got to change. The other guy, Jalen Carter, I mean, Jalen's got to play well. He told me, that he was not happy with the way he played against Ohio State. And so there's some cleaning up to do. Kirby said, the Dogs need to go see the doctor. Well, they went for their wellness check. They survived Ohio State. And now it's an opportunity for Georgia to win a national championship in back-to-back seasons. Any opportunity to win a national championship, these opportunities just don't come around very often. Right behind me here is this. I'll move this up. Or I probably should move it up just slightly. That has been something that folks have been taking pictures in front of a lot. This is actually the media section, but they're not being real hardcore about who can come in this courtyard, which to me is fine. But there's been a lot of folks who see it and they come down and take a picture of it. Why? Because it's special. These things don't last forever. And that's why you have to take advantage of this opportunity. Georgia is the better team. They are a 2-touchdown favorite. They should win this game. And they need to. Make sure you're signing up for our newsletter before it forgets. Right down below. You'll get all our news. We're going to send the newsletter out later today on Monday, but we're going to send one. We're going to blast one out about an hour after the game. It's going to have all the links to the stories. But Georgia should win this game. Georgia should win this game. That's not disrespectful towards Texas Christian. They're a really good team. I did not think TCU would beat Michigan, but I wasn't we wouldn't have been stunned. And I'm not sure that I was surprised. I was not stunned that they won that game, but beating this Georgia team is asking a lot. And I think if you're trying to win the national championship, you should be asking a lot. I pay attention to betting lines a lot. I do not bet, but I pay attention closely. And when the line started dropping, with Georgia Ohio State and just kept going down and down and down. And save the lectures about, you know, teaching me about betting lines and what it means and all that stuff. People know, or there's a feel for things, and Kirby talks about there's no such thing. Probability doesn't equal results. No, it doesn't. But I don't have to go out there and play football. Y'all do, not me. My job is to talk about Georgia, not to play for Georgia. And the probability is that Georgia should win this game. Now the question is how high. When Georgia had to dig that Ohio State game out hard, but there's not been a lot of games where Georgia's been about a 2-touchdown favorite in the last 10 years that they've lost. I mean, they were 2-touchdown favorites over the Gators this year. They won that game 42-20, or whatever it was. They were a 2-touchdown favorite over Oregon. That was a blowout. They were more against South Carolina, but this is a game the Dogs should win. They're better at almost every position. I think the TCU receiver is definitely better than any guy that Georgia has individually. But if you start thinking about AD, Ladd McConkey, the tight ends. I mean, if Darnell is healthy and back, which I expect to happen, if Warren McClendon is healthy and back, which I expect to happen, if Ladd McConkey is healthy and back, which I'm less likely, like 100% Ladd, I'm not sure we see that tonight. But if those three guys are back, you're talking about three starters that really were either limited or did not play in that game. So Ladd was limited. Warren didn't play at all, and Darnell was standing by me half the game. So it is going to be tough for TCU. I think that I just don't think TCU is going to win. I think Georgia will win this game. They should win this game. But this is sports. And, we saw over time upsets happen. And when you're good is when the whole country is pulling for the other team. And right now, there's a lot of people pulling against Georgia. Some of that is SEC fatigue. We might be getting to the point where it's Georgia fatigue. Like, Clemson was a cute story until Dabo kept chirping, right? And, Auburn in 10. So there have been teams that, win the national championship and then they kind of go away or whatever. And we're going to see with Georgia, But when you become the Yankees, when you're the villain, when you're Darth Vader, that's when you're good, when you're Duke. Georgia's not at that point yet. They're not Alabama yet. But tonight goes a long way towards, just taking Alabama and just. So I don't think that's what will happen in terms of Bama and Georgia. I think we are in a 10-year cycle with those two. We don't know when it will end. I do not think it's ended. I think for TCU, this is saying, hey, we are not only the best team in Texas and the best team in the Big 12, even though we weren't the champions, we can be a national player. And, back to Clemson and Auburn, if those two can do it, TCU can do it, frankly. And that's what Georgia should be, concerned about. TCU is a very small school, just like Clemson. And it's in a football-crazed state. And once you get it going, you can keep it going. But it's hard, man. And that's, excuse me, that's the thing about Kirby and them tonight. There's just not tons of opportunities to win national championships. Had they lost to Ohio State, they would have not won this national championship. And although looking back on it, the Dog Post crew thought it would be Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama. We thought, I did initially before they started playing the season, that it would be Ohio State and Alabama. It should have been Ohio State and Alabama. That's just not what happened because Georgia was the better overall team. And I think that's what's going to get TCU in trouble tonight. I think it's going to be the fact that Georgia can control games. That's what I would be concerned about if I were TCU, that Georgia can control games with their physicality. They can, run clock and be explosive. They can do a lot of different moves. That's the challenge when you're going up against a team like the Dogs who have really good playmakers at all of their positions. They may not be elite college football players, but like, for instance, Kyrus Jackson I don't know if Ladd McConkey is an elite, wide receiver for the NFL. He's really good at Georgia. And the return of A.D. Mitchell, who did not seem like he was necessarily on the same page with Stetson the entire time. I mean, there's a lot of, small jets that you have to deal with. You're not dealing with just one bomber with the Dogs. And it's hard to deal with all those guys. And on top of that, you've got guys like Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton. They had really good games last week. And if Darnell Washington returns, you could very well see the return of Georgia's power game where they're trying to grind things out. Georgia should win this game. I am predicting that they will. But it's easy for me to say. It's easy for y'all to think it. This team has to go out and do it. Now, the vibe this week has been, Georgia's pretty serious. But that's who they are. They're not trying to be loose. They are a serious bunch. They care about football. They care about winning, and they care about each other. I want to add that last thing. It seems and sounds corny, but I do think the one thing that Kirby's really grown up on is that some of the corny stuff, so to speak, that does matter. The connection to the other person, that does matter at the end of the day, in my view, because those guys just did not stop against Ohio State 8 days ago or 10 days ago. They continued to roll on, and they were doing it for themselves and each other. And I think that once you start doing it that way, it's infectious, and it's hard to stop when you're as talented as the Georgia Bulldogs. Games kicks at about 7:45 on ESPN. We'll have all the details, win or lose. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the website.